Thank you very much, Senator Durbin. This article is a few years old, but to underscore your point, here's the opening line of an article from CNBC on this question of salaries for the CEOs of for-profit universities. The article opens by saying, quote, "Forget Wall Street and Silicon Valley. If you're looking to rake it in post-graduation, set your sights on the executive floor of one of the nation's for-profit colleges." That is an article from CNBC detailing the fact that in their article, and again, this is a few years old, the salary of the head of Phoenix University was $11 million. The CEO of Bridgepoint, another national for-profit university, was making over $20 million a year. And you can say to yourself, well, these are private companies. These are for-profit companies. So, why should Congress be in the business of caring what the CEO of Phoenix University makes or what the CEO of Bridgepoint or ITT or DeVry makes? Harry Truman made his name as a critic of wartime profiteering. LBJ made his name as a young member of Congress doing the same thing. And their idea was that it's all well and good to make yourself rich in the most dynamic capitalist economy in the world, but it's another thing to be getting rich off of the taxpayers. It's another thing to be making your fortune almost exclusively coming from sources of money that really are all of our constituents' money, the taxes that they pay. And that's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about executives that are getting rich off of companies that are 90% funded by the U.S. taxpayer. 90% funded, because this 90-10 rule that we talk about is an important rule for these companies because they run their revenue right up to the limit. So many of these for-profit universities, their revenue is 70, 80, 90% from the taxpayers of the United States. And their CEOs are making $11 million, $12 million, sometimes $20 million a year. Listen, I'm all for people making $1 million. I got a lot of people in Connecticut that are making $20 million. But if we are really being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, we should be wary of those that are making their fortune off of the federal dole. And that's what's happening today. And so, Senator Durbin, I just wanted to add to this conversation a note on accountability. Because that used to be one of the things that united Republicans and Democrats. I mean, it used to be, frankly, that Republicans, I'll admit, cared more about accountability when it came to federal dollars than Democrats sometimes did. It was Republicans in the second Bush administration that started putting a lot of strings attached to education dollars that were flowing out of Washington to make sure that there was actually quality attached to the money that was coming from U.S. federal taxpayers. But that era seems to be over. And unfortunately, we don't have a bipartisan consensus on accountability. We're about to approve a budget, which a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats will vote for, that will send $140 billion in higher education aid to universities all across this country. And it will come with almost no strings attached. It will come with almost no expectations that schools give a degree to kids that actually get them a job or attempt to keep them in school so that they can get some return on investment for the money that we are all making in them. And Senator Durbin, you might have talked about it already today, but the numbers for for-profit colleges that just came out today are absolutely stunning. I don't know if you've already talked about this Trends in Student Aid report that just came out today from the College Board. But here's an amazing statistic. What this survey says is that borrowers who don't graduate from public and private nonprofit four-year schools are default at about the same rate as borrowers who do graduate from for-profit schools. So think about that. You are just as likely to not be able to pay back your student loans if you get a degree from a for-profit school as if you drop out of a not-for-profit school. Here's the numbers. 14% of for-profit graduates default, 15% of not-for-profit four-year college non-graduates default. That's a really stunning number. And yet we're just sending money willy-nilly out to these schools that aren't putting students in degrees. Why aren't they putting students in degrees? Because they are marketing themselves in a way that just doesn't square with the job market today. As part of one of these attorney general lawsuits, there's a litany of stories about the abusive marketing techniques of these for-profit universities. One of them said, I told the enrollment representative that I did not want to sign the loan unless I was guaranteed a job, because I know that I would not be able to pay it back. She told me that the school placed 99% of the students, and they could guarantee a job after I finished my externship. She told me that I'd be making between $18 and $20 an hour after completing the program. No worries about the loan. She told me Career Services would place me in a job and that she makes sure everybody who's enrolled gets placed. These are the claims that are being made. And so it's frankly not surprising when you have these for-profit universities enrolling thousands of kids in video game design degrees that you are just as likely to default on a loan if you graduate from some of these worthless programs as if you don't graduate from a not-for-profit university. And so Senator Schatz and myself, and last Congress joined by Senator Murray and Senator Sanders, we introduced a piece of legislation that would start to require some real outcomes from universities. Now, we applied it to for-profit and not-for-profit universities. We said that you've got to show that you are giving kids a chance to succeed and get a job, that you're keeping your tuition at reasonable levels, and if you do that, then you can continue to get Title IV dollars. But if you don't, then we're not going to continue to send money to these schools that simply aren't producing graduates that are ready to compete, or are deceptively drawing students in based on claims that just don't wash out in the end. And so, yes, we have to shut down these fraudulent institutions like Corinthian, but we could just make a decision, Republicans and Democrats, to put some additional accountability standards on Title IV dollars, apply it to for-profit and not-for-profit schools, and say that if you have a certain number of students that are defaulting, you're not going to continue to get Title IV dollars. If you have a rate of tuition increase that is way above that of the national average, you're not going to continue to get Title IV dollars. Now, we know by statistics that this would put a good number of for-profits out of business, might even touch a handful of the lower-performing not-for-profits, but it really should be something that both sides can come together on, just some basic accountability for higher education, a basic accountability for the $140 billion we send, because this doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to pad the pockets of these CEOs that are making $20 million a year off of our taxpayers when they aren't delivering results that are actually making our economy better. And so thank you, Senator Durbin, for bringing us together here. I hope that as we debate the Higher Education Reauthorization Act in front of the Help Committee, and I think Senator Alexander is very interested in some of these debates, that we're going to add some accountability standards. We're talking about these for-profits, but if we really are being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, we should expect some results.